Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the White Noise podcast. And a very happy Valentine's Day from myself and my lovely co-host Leanna. In today's minisode, we're going to be talking about pining. I think is the best way to describe it. Romantic subtext. So, fair warning: this is an episode for romantics. If that isn't for you, come back a little later because it's probably going to get pretty soppy and pretty cheesy.
I mean, it's who we are as people. Yes, we will. If you're a curmudgeon, this is your final warning. Get going. Basically, that's what Sky's getting at, just a bit more politely. So Sky put it well. The broad kind of theme of this episode is pining, because we kind of talked about what we wanted to talk about for Valentine's Day, and we just started talking about how much we both love period dramas, K-dramas, anime, and we realized that at first we thought loose, but really it's not as loose as we thought. Thread between them all is pining. That whole, is it real? Is it not? The ambiguity. It's almost like that teenage romance is maintained in period dramas, K-dramas, anime.
Yeah. I realized something as well, so we've talked about, because the reason I also brought up romantic subtext, I don't even know if that's a term, but I'm coining it if it's not, is because we always talk about queer subtext and stuff, right? And I just realized we are subtext girlies, because even when it comes to straight media, it's like we are here for the lingering touches, the little secret looks. Like, don't get me wrong, love a steamy scene as much as the next person, but that's not, I don't know, it's not what gets me. It's those longing looks, it's those secret notes, it's those misunderstandings that nearly tears the lovers apart. It's just
I think a good way to start this episode, there's basically two main things I want to bring up. First, me and Sky both, like Sky said, we kind of like subtext more than we like anything explicit, so that means that we kind of want stories where the romance is almost like the central plot, but it isn't actually the central narrative, if that makes any sense, which really, if you think about it, is a lot of Jane Austen, and then a lot of these stories are very Austen-y, if you get what I'm saying. And so the second point is that means that even though we're going to be talking about things like period dramas, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be talking about the ones you think we will. So an obvious thing is Bridgerton, Sky, did you ever actually watch Bridgerton?
Oh, Leanna, we did this not last year, the year before.
No, I was trying to remember.
I watched the first episode and I couldn't do it because, and do you know what? Great example, because Bridgerton did not, in my opinion, capture the pining that is present in other period dramas.
See, this is why I want to talk about it, because the second season for a lot of people was a massive, massive success, because it learnt from that. And the second season is about pining. You don't have all the crazy sex that you do in the first season. So if I was you, or say anyone that it's I love a period drama, but season one didn't work for me, maybe try season two, because you don't need to have seen season one. It's they're loosely connected. So what's interesting is the whole point of season one is the story is about the oldest daughter. She's getting married, she has to find a husband for her family, but she doesn't know anything because women aren't taught anything about the world of sex and romance and marriage. And so the whole point of that season is it's her sexual awakening, her sexual education. The whole point of the second season, the woman is I've done all this, I don't give a fuck. That's literally the point. The whole thing really is that the guy is kind of obsessed with her. Don't get me wrong, she's into it as well. They both are. They're obsessed with each other. But it's from the guy's perspective. He's the oldest Bridgerton sibling, and so the whole point of Bridgerton season 2 is two people that shouldn't be together, but they just have this unexplainable attraction to each other, but it's never acted upon because they can't do it. And that, to me, completely explains why it just blew the first season out the water. I cannot watch season one now. It pales in comparison. Honestly, you gotta go watch it right now. Season 2 just completely blew season 1 out the water. Season 1 pales in comparison now. So honestly, you just gotta finish this, start season 2, babe.
Well, I saw obviously people talk about it on social media, and I'm going to admit I knew it wasn't, but I would have said it was a different show, because I saw that from the edits that people made, the way people were talking about it. I actually didn't even realize that the characters from the first season were even still a part of it, because they were just nowhere to be found.
It's because I think just like that central couple had so much chemistry. Like
Mhm.
there was a lot of build up, and then the payoff happens later on, whereas in season one it's like not immediate but much more immediate in comparison. In a way, it actually brought in the traditional period drama fans, because the whole
Mhm.
thing with season one of Bridgerton was like it brought in a lot of people that don't usually watch period dramas. I'm not a purist. I don't give a shit. Like I you don't need to have read like every Austen book to enjoy these things, but I just think it's really interesting and telling that season two really brought those people into the fandom that weren't sold at all at first. Like
Mhm.
the amount of YouTube videos or like season two saved Bridgerton and stuff like
Do you
that,
know what though? Like, even just from the first episode and like hearing you talk about the comparison between the two seasons, there's nothing wrong with this. You know, we did our fan fiction episode, so to hear our opinions on that, go and listen to that one. But I think it's because it seems to be the first one was like, quote unquote, I don't know, like housewife porn,
it
like that reimagining of an era. Like, basically that wouldn't have happened. Like, that's just not how it would have been, but that's how people imagine it because it's sexy and it's
yeah.
like that's what people want, but not everyone. Like us, for example, you know, the period drama subtext girlies. And this is why, again, not to do a repeat of our last Valentine special, but it's why I was so surprised that I loved Pride and Prejudice when I watched it. Like, fell in love with it, because I thought I was going to hate it, because I thought it was going to be like really stereotypical straight love story of angry man and you know, willpower woman, and but it wasn't.
Well, it's kind of been sadly reduced to that in the public, perception, because I think what happened is people looked at the central, like the very, very basic central aspect of Pride and Prejudice, and they go, oh, trope, enemies to lovers. Not a fan of the whole trope thing in romance. I think it's ridiculous and it's like really reductive. But anyway, I think that that's what people did because that's what people do now, especially like BookTok people. And it kind of made Pride and Prejudice lose almost some of its like more serious elements to the general audience, like that hadn't actually read or watched it. So a lot of people having, you said you didn't think you'd like it because you're just saying, oh, man and a woman. Like a lot of people don't now know that, it's actually massively critical of the whole like marriage mart and all that jazz. It's very critical of like women's place at that time. And it's interesting because it's not just like, oh, this is bad. It like celebrates love while doing those things. So it's
Yeah.
like appeals to women because it's, it's like it's not just angry. It's like very thoughtful. It's very sweet, but it's not saccharine and like housewife porn, it's doing so much.
I think it also really plays into something that, until I started really thinking about it and like, why do I love period dramas? Why do I love K dramas in the same way? It's that building of desire that
Yes.
I think, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've said we want to talk about it at some point, like sexless cinema and stuff like that. Like, I don't want sex to be taken away from things. Like, obviously there is a place and a time for sex. But unfortunately, a lot of people are using it in lieu of romance. Like, they're trying to convey the desire and intimacy between two people by having them go at it. But like, as anyone who's actually been in love knows, that's just one part of it. Like, the intimacy, comes from the connection that you have with the person. Like, you don't get intimacy from sex.
Exactly. And I think that's what something like, as we already dived into loads, that's the mistake Bridgerton season 1 made and Bridgerton season 2 fixed. And I think that something like Bridgerton season 2 is like very clearly influenced by Pride and Prejudice in some ways, because, as the title suggests, Pride, Prejudice, there's these instant assumptions we make about people. And I think the enemies to lovers trope focuses too much on, like you say, sex to kind of create I don't know, it tries to almost like equate sex to love and intimacy, because it's like, oh, there's this chemistry because they hate each other so much and then they shag and then they're in love, and it's like it doesn't work like that.
But that's my point though, because it's like these things always try and point out, you can have sex with somebody that you hate. Hate fucking is a thing. but you can't always have intimacy with that person or like fall in love with that person. So I totally agree. Like, whilst I can be a sucker for a little enemies to lovers trope, even though, you know, like I said, thinking about tropes in romance isn't always fun. It's more to do with something like Pride and Prejudice, where it's like they were just adversaries, and then that was slowly broken down without any clothing needed to be removed. I just think that's so much more impactful.
So much more vulnerable, isn't it?
It really is.
It's like these tiny little moments of dialogue in Pride and Prejudice seem so much more like gasp worthy than any sex scene could do. If we're going to dive into Pride and Prejudice bit, I think a big thing to kind of establish for like the listeners or watchers who haven't actually like read or dived into or watched Pride and Prejudice is that it's not about two people that hate each other for no reason. There's a lot of reasons. Most of them aren't actually personal. They're more to do with like what society, you know, tells them about each other in a way. So, you know, her family are considered really, how would you word it? Like, I don't know, how would you word it? It's really hard to explain in like modern terms. Like, they're just viewed as like a kind of like impolite, a bit too loud. They don't really follow like
outside of the social norms.
Exactly. And so viewed as like there's no hope for the daughters to like marry wealthy, and they're kind of the rich men that come into the town are kind of told to like stow away a bit. And then he's rich, he's part of the gentry, however you want to pronounce it, all that jazz. So there is reason for it. And then what's like so lovely about Pride and Prejudice is that like they kind of like start to actually know each other more beyond that, and that's what brings them together, and them kind of acting in ways that kind of I find it so hard to like word just because I love it so
honestly
much.
I think it's to do with the richness, the fact that, like you just said, it's not that these two people hate each other for the sake of a story. I don't even say they don't hate each other. This is the thing that people seem to forget when it comes to enemies to lovers. They don't hate each other's guts. You can't, I don't care what anybody says, you can't fall in love with somebody that you hate. The reason that you hate them is because you have these really powerful emotions for them that you're not willing to be vulnerable enough to call love. So instead you go for the next powerful emotion, which is hate. And you can tell this in Pride and Prejudice from the beginning. Because she really doesn't hide it. Like, she's very playful with it. He, on the other hand, is very scared of it, or at least that's the way that
they care
I
so
was when I
much
was
about
watching
what
it.
the other thinks of them, don't they? Which is so, you know,
exactly
beautiful.
But it's that richness that's built around them, and this is why I would fully compare K-dramas to period dramas. So I've just realized I'm going to be talking about a really specific era of K-dramas. We're talking 2000s, 2010s, because the K-dramas of today, I will admit, I haven't watched a lot of them. I do still rewatch a lot of the old ones for the pining and the subtext. But it's like, so in that particular era, a lot of people might call them silly because, like, you know, they had like the really out there storylines. But to me, it was these storylines that did the same thing in these period dramas like Pride and Prejudice, that was the world building and the backstory and the richness that gave the characters character. So they like existed outside of each other, but at the same time they did work really well together. And the main one that comes to mind for me first is Pinocchio. So to anybody who has never heard of it, it's great, you should go watch it. Liana actually introduced me to it, and I think it was the first K-drama I ever knowingly watched. And if you haven't ever watched it, I'm going to explain it now, and the storyline's going to sound insane. So I can't remember anybody's names because it's been a long time since I watched it, but there is this guy who, when he was younger, his dad was a firefighter, highly respected, and then one day there's like a massive fire where I think pretty much everybody dies, and his dad for some reason gets blamed for it, so the family gets shamed. And in a very dramatic K-drama fashion, the mum decides to herself, and the young boy and his brother, the mum and the brother, what you think the brother, succeed, but the little boy doesn't, and he ends up getting washed up on an island where he meets an old man, and then that old man raises him, and he meets I think it's the granddaughter of the old man, becomes her quote unquote uncle, but it's not House of the Dragon, okay? It's just a term of endearment. They're more raised, this is also problematic, they're more raised like siblings, but they're not,
So
okay?
weird.
But on top of that, and this is why it's called Pinocchio, within this universe, for no reason, even though it does have plot relevance, there is a condition called Pinocchio syndrome, which only so many people are affected with. And basically, it means that if they lie, they hiccup. And this young girl has this condition. The whole arc of the show is that they're both trying to be reporters for different reasons. I could really keep going into detail. We'd be here all day. But that's the bits that you need to know. And as I'm sure you can imagine, these two slowly fall in love. But the thing with K-dramas is that, and again, at least of this era, is that obviously they were really restricted in what they could show, which is why if you ever talk to like a K-drama connoisseur who's been watching them for a while, everyone's like, well, everyone knows they don't kiss until like the 24th episode and things like that. But you still feel that chemistry and that tension more than a couple that like fuck in the first episode.
Because they have to work on it though, isn't it? Like 100% is. But what I love as well is what's so cool about K-dramas is because they take so long, you kind of get to know them as characters and individuals before there's anything to do with the romantic storyline. So like the first episode of Pinocchio is like this insane, like oh my god, this massive fire, oh, like backstory. And that's like most K-dramas. Like the first episode or two, you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like
It's
this
like
is
trauma dump.
what was described to me. Yeah, trauma dump. You've basically given all the trauma of the main
Yeah.
and it's beautiful. I wouldn't have it any other way. And if it doesn't work that way, it gets sprinkled throughout. So like every 2 or 3 episodes, you get like a 5-minute sequence which alludes to something in their past. And it seems so dumb, but it works so well to like.
This is the thing that, like I said, when you say it out loud, it sounds crazy, but you watch it and you get so immersed because I think period dramas do it as well because obviously of the way it restricts the characters like physically. But there's just also something about K-dramas that's the relationship's just so respectful because it's kind of like they don't even know, there is like an innocence to it. They don't even know how they feel, what they're doing. And the biggest thing, like you said, is that they always have this major trauma that's distracting them. But it's like you could say to me, like, what's the steamiest scene or the scene that made you like in a film or a TV show? And honestly, it's the toast scene from Pinocchio. And if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, just Google the toast scene from Pinocchio because it's also so fucking funny. Like the way her dad reacts to the whole situation is so funny. But it's these situations that it's like, how have you managed to create such an intimate moment in such a ridiculous scenario? Like I'm saying this like it's some like philosophical should be studied. I could just be entertained by very silly things, but you know.
I think what I love about K-dramas is how they're starting to change. So like now when you go back, you're like, oh my god, this is so tame. But then you say that even the ones now are still so fucking tame. There was that one that came out, the Netflix one, Nevertheless. Did you ever watch it?
I didn't know.
Like, it's so explicit for a K-drama, and it's like you still don't see fuck. Like it's more the content. Like it's about like uni students and like people sleeping around. So it's like, ooh, this is different. But like anyone who just watches like 90210 or Gossip Girl would watch that and be like, this is really tame. And it's like, this is explicit for a K-drama. Like,
yeah.
It's the thing is, like, at the end of the day, you have to buy into the whole idea of like this is supposed to reflect real life more in a way. Like people act like, oh, it's so tame. And it's like, well, not really, because the people you fancy in real life, there are months of back and forth and will they, won't they? And I think
it doesn't just happen like that.
Exactly. For a lot of people, that's the appeal because in a way it actually reflects their real lives more. You know, that pining, that can I tell them I like them, the when you finally tell them you slightly like them more than a friend, it's like this huge momentous larger than life moment. So while like maybe it seems really dramatic for some people, that's how it feels when you're in the moment. And that's the appeal for everyone, because like I don't know, I don't want to just like watch stuff all the time where people just sleep together immediately and treat it like it's no big deal. I think like hookup culture has kind of like ruined people's idea of romance, and it's kind of like changing romance media. So it's kind of nice to go back to the basics and watch K-dramas.
It's weird because it's kind of like in a good and a bad way, because obviously like hookup culture is really like normalizing, as it should, people just hooking up like for the sake of it. But this is the other thing, like people are kind of again confusing sex and love. Like they can be together, they can be separate. And I think the biggest things that like period dramas and K-dramas do, what did and still do today, is the way it builds up like fanfare around these couples, because
like episode to episode, aren't they?
Exactly. And it's like people are rooting for these characters to like get together, and it's like, not that it's the be all and end all relationship, but as soon as these characters bang, it's kind of like, what more are you waiting for? Like there's those lingering touches don't really, like, unless you have a couple that like got it on in like the first episode and then they're kept apart for some reason, that's a whole different discussion. So much of the tension even happens off screen. And this is where I think we can also move into anime a little bit, because Liana brought up an anime that I didn't even think we were going to talk about, but it makes so much sense to talk about. Yuri on Ice. Obviously, that got a huge following for other reasons, because obviously people were pairing the two guys together, and like that, there were problematic aspects of that, but that's not what we're talking about today. I didn't watch Yuri on Ice when it came out, so I thought it was so much more explicit and intense than people were saying. And then I actually watched it last year and I realized, like you were kind of just saying, that it's relatively tame. It 100% knew what it was doing. Like it knew, because there are some scenes in it where it's like, really? But yeah, and it was just like, like people took it and they like rooted for these characters, and people are still pissed off today that they never got the film that they were promised.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, some Ambiguity is fantastic. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know people want the film, but if they get it, they get it. If they don't, they don't. You know, I know it sucks, but it is what it is. Up until that point, I hadn't really seen anything that like drove people nuts to the point that Yuri and Ice did, other than like Super Hulock. Now it's so run of the mill. People are like, oh yeah, everyone gets obsessed with things. But when Yuri and Ice did, it was such a massive deal, because it was like, it was different to Super Hulock, because at the end of the day, it was a Japanese import. Do you know what I mean?
This was it, yeah.
Like with Super Hulock, you know, it's on like BBC and like, you know, all these different.
And also, I was gonna say, yeah, they were on like mainstream broadcast channels. They all had super famous stars in that everybody knew. It was like those shows were gonna get big even without the like subtext and everything in them. Exactly. But because the thing is as well, Yuri on Ice isn't the first anime to do that. Like there are, I can't count the amount of animes that have like queer subtext in them. And then just like romantic subtext in general. But people went feral for this anime.
Well,
like
kind of hit at that, like now people are starting to refer to it as the golden age of the internet, which I think, if I remember correctly, refers to like 2012 to like 2000 and
yeah, I think
15,
so.
16, something like that. And that fits perfectly, because I'm pretty sure Yuri on Ice was like right at the end of that. It's like 2015, 16.
At like Tumblr's peak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's just perfect storm, really, wasn't it? To add to that, I went to visit, I went to Tokyo around the time of Yuri on Ice's peak, and oh my fuck, it was everywhere. Like, there was this huge store that was like anime merch, and there was just like floors and floors and floors of it. And there was this one floor where just an entire section was Yuri on Ice.
I believe
was like,
it.
this is pretty crazy, considering this is like only one season in, and everything else here is like an established long-term thing. So I was like, that is impressive, and it just shows the power of like not just a romance plot, but like queer romance. You know, people just rally behind that shit.
How did you witness all of that and then never watch it? That surprises me so much.
I think I kind of got put off in a way.
Oh, you know, actually, no, I get that, because I feel like I was the same when it came out, and then I don't know what happened. I think I had a bottle of wine and Funimation was open, and I was like,
let's see.
It was that. No, but literally though, and honestly, my experience of watching it was really fucking weird, because the problem is that I actually started watching it originally on YouTube, and it was dubbed. Yeah, it was dubbed. No, it was subbed. So obviously it had the original Japanese voice actors, and it was like, it was good. I was really enjoying it. And then YouTube stopped having the correct amount of episodes, to a point where I actually missed a really pivotal episode. But anyway, so then I moved on to Funimation only has it dubbed. Usually I don't really fall on either side of the dub sub debate. I don't mind whichever one I start watching it in first, I will continue watching it in. But Yuri on Ice dubbed it's just not right.
Why is it just, it makes it feel too American?
In a weird way, it went from being something that like I was actually kind of taking semi-seriously to feeling really immature.
I think that's the case with a lot of dubs, though. They kind of go for more that like cartoony sound, because I think that's how they approach it, because they think, oh, it's animated.
I think the thing as well is obviously because it was like an international skating competition, they had a lot of characters from different parts of the world. And obviously in the original, they all had Japanese voice actors, but in this one, I'm sure they were all American voice actors just doing accents. And it was just really hard to take quite a lot of it seriously, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. I did think it was cute. It was one of those things, I think if I hadn't watched it all together, I probably would have watched a couple episodes and then forgotten about it. But yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we talked about the fandom a bit, but like the whole point of Yuri on Ice was like the fact that it just like dilly-dallied around things.
Yeah.
It didn't really like dive straight into the romance, which is the exact same as everything else we've talked about tonight. A big one that also did that, you don't immediately think of, but will become very relevant again in a few weeks, is Attack on Titan.
Yes.
Come on, mamas. Let's go.
Slightly different though, just because I know people are probably going to bring this up, so we're not going to talk about it, but obviously with Yuri on Ice, it was problematic, kind of the way they baited it, because obviously it fell under the queer baiting scenario for quite a while. I do think it was queer baiting, like it just was. They knew what they were doing, like they never did anything explicitly, whereas like obviously with Attack on Titan, bit different. This is more your traditional pining.
And it's just, do you know what? We're going to sound like hypocrites because we were judging the whole sibling dynamic in Pinocchio. And now we're about to be massive hypocrites.
I forget that they were actually kind of raised as siblings.
I know you do. Everyone does. Everyone does. And people go, oh, it's different though, because you could tell he was like in love with her from the minute they met. Babe, no.
Yeah, no. Also, he was not.
And it's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain because it's not like from when the events of the show proper, like not just like the first couple episodes, but like the main action. How many years is there in it from when they meet? 4?
Oh no, a lot more. What, from like to the current timeline?
No. I mean, like, so the main action of the show would start probably from like this, when the Colossal Titan, like when they joined the Survey Corps on the Colossal Titan.
Yeah, maybe 4, 5.
When they met, probably like 4 or 5 years. But I'm just kind of like, people go, oh, they didn't know each other long enough to have like a brother-sister relationship. It's like, yes, they did. Yes, they did. Stop trying to defend it. It's weird. It's really hard because I have to do this proper like mental gymnastics. There's like so much cognitive dissonance going on in my own brain, and I'm very aware of it.
Honestly, Leanna, like I said, we are living in the era of House of the Dragon, so I actually really don't think people are going to be judging us as much as you think they are.
It's so weird. I never thought I'd see the day where people are like, a little bit of incest.
Right? We can't get into that because we'll be here.
No, like, I don't even want to defend it. I ain't defending it at all.
Yeah.
I find it's really hard because I'm like, did dude, Jimmy Asiyama, sorry for saying dude, did he realise he was going to take them down a romantic path? Would he have written it differently? Do you know what I mean? I kind of wonder that.
I don't think so. I don't think so, because despite what we're saying, I don't think he intended them to kind of come across as brother and sister. I don't think he did.
This is what I don't understand. If you don't intend for them to, why even have that as the setup? I've never understood that.
I guess because you maybe just didn't really, like when you're inside your own head writing something and then it's only until someone reads it you're like, oh,
yeah,
not quite like that, but I don't know. And I guess
they had been like 16 when the family took her under the wing. That would be one thing, but they're literally kids.
But the pining's great.
We're kind of going too deep into this debate.
We are a little bit, yeah.
Anyway, to go back to what we were going to talk about. What's so brilliant about like the relationship between Mikasa and Erin, if you couldn't tell, that's who we're talking about, because I realized we literally didn't even say the names.
The people know. The
They'll
people know.
What's brilliant, I mean, there's another relationship in it that you could talk about, which I think literally brings me to tears.
Which one? There are a
Ymir and
few.
Historia. Stop it. Brings me to tears. Yeah.
So true. I think they need their own episode though, if I'm being honest,
Oh my
at
God,
some point. I mean, don't get me wrong,
5 months.
I was just gonna say another Attack on Titan episode is coming from us. Like, stick around for next month. But
we're gonna milk that bitch, honestly.
Yeah.
But like on it, so basically, yeah, like I just said, Ymir and Historia are the elite Attack on Titan couple. But anyway, Mikasa and Erin, what's so brilliant about the way that their story is written is there's never any like outright like I love yous and stuff, but like, do you know what I mean? It's just so subtle.
From
And like
either
you
of them.
really have to like dig.
Yeah.
Because some people just fully cannot see it. Like they do not
Well,
see
this is it. Well, I remember when it first came out and people were just like, you're just reading into it, you're just pairing them together because they're this, or like it's a one-sided thing, and it's like, bruh, it's not. It's really not. I was like, he is just bringing it full circle, to Pride and Prejudice. He is just scared of his own vulnerability. I am psychoanalyzing Erin for all the wrong reasons. Yeah, he is just, and also, he's a bit distracted right now. He's got his stomp on. Yeah.
Got his rumble on.
He's got his rumble on. He's busy. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like, I think, not to gender it, what has been very interesting as well is how many like male viewers have kind of been like, it's not that way, babe. And then like a lot of other people kind of see the smaller details and the way he expresses it, and they understand that it's about the subtext, as we're saying. It's not about like grandiose, like I love yous and I'm doing this for you, or da 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 da, and that's the beauty of it. And that's what I really liked about Yumi and Historia for ages. So then when they finally did do the letter, oh Christ, I was in bits.
I still can't get over the fact that people still deny their relationship, even when it was explicitly said.
Because we like to talk about, say, like pining and subtext. This all kind of brings it together, doesn't it? Like, at what point do you confirm it? Yeah, because for some people, the whole point of pining is ambiguity and not confirming and everything being subtext. Some people love that, you and me. But there is a point where it is really nice to have something confirmed, especially a queer relationship like that. So like Yumi and Historia. But some people are just never going to be pleased because just look at Erin and Mikasa and Yumi and Historia. People are fuming that Erin and Mikasa is like not getting like fully confirmed like for the whole show. Enough people are mad when Yumi and Historia is confirmed. So it's just like, how can you can't please an audience when it comes to these kind of like subtle love stories. You just can't, because everyone wants something different from it.
It pleases me, so I really couldn't give a fuck.
Please, me too.
Yeah.
I got the end game. Well, I didn't. But I got the confirmation I wanted. In my mind, I think it was endgame.
I think we need to start wrapping this up because we're slowly moving into Attack on Titan territory, and we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We've got a couple more weeks. We will be back to talk about it, but for now, to wrap it up, yeah, pining, it's great. I love it. I think I'm always gonna love subtext. I'm never gonna grow out of it.
Yeah.
Give me subtext over, like I said, a steamy scene any day, honestly.
I agree. I think my final note is gonna be just the thing I mentioned beginning, Bridgerton season 2. I think it's not a perfect piece of media, it's not a masterpiece, but I think it does what we've talked about today perfectly. A lot of it is subtext in the beginning, it slowly builds and you eventually get a payoff. And to me, that is the perfect way to do pining. Make your audience wait, make them earn it.
That's the formula.
Exactly.
That's all I want.
You can't get enough. But yeah, anyway, this was a fun episode. I love talking about, these kind of like piney, frustrating pieces of media. I actually had so many more written down, but I could have literally spoken for like 2 hours. So it's probably good that we
there'll be another Valentine's Day. Maybe we'll, if people want to hear more about it, because this is the other thing, we weren't actually sure if this was just an us thing. I know people like period dramas and K-dramas and stuff, but like, do they realize this is why? I hope we help people discover their inner piner. I don't know. I'm trying to coin words that don't even exist. We need to end this.
We do. But anyway, yeah. I hope you had a lovely Valentine's Day, Sky. I hope everyone listening and watching has done as well. I mean, it feels really weird to say to you right now because obviously we're pre-recording, as everyone will know. But anyway, anyway, yeah. I'm probably now going to go and try and make my boyfriend watch some like really piney romance film with me. Maybe something weird, we'll find out. But yeah, let us know what you're probably going to be watching today, or what like really like piney pieces of media you have been watching recently, because we're always taking recommendations.
On Valentine's Day and outside of Valentine's Day, just
It's a
love us a bit of romance.
So yeah, if you like this video, like I said, leave comments, leave suggestions, like please, because it really helps us out more than you can imagine, and subscribe if you have enjoyed this video or want to check out more stuff we've got coming out. We've got some really exciting videos coming out over the next few months, and we're just like really excited for all the stuff that's coming out in 2023. It's looking to be an exciting year for releases. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, find us all over socials, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.